The evening had settled like a quiet sigh over our suburban street, the kind of calm that lulls you into forgetting the world beyond your walls. Sarah was perched at our worn dining table, the surface marked by years of spilled coffee and late-night homework sessions. Across from me sat Adam, my 23-year-old son, the one person who had always been both a mirror and a mystery. His tall frame slouched slightly, hands clasped tightly in front of him. His usual ease replaced by a tension I couldn't immediately read. Adam had always been composed. The kind of person who thinks before he speaks and weighs every word as if it were a promise. His calm demeanor, so reminiscent of Michael, my husband, had been my quiet comfort on nights when fatigue wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. Michael, meanwhile, was late again. Work had become a constant excuse, his presence shrinking to occasional smiles and fleeting touches. I had accepted it, telling myself he was tired, that love didn't always need dramatic gestures to exist. But the space he left behind had begun to feel less like absence and more like silence. Adam's eyes, dark and searching, met mine with an intensity that made my heart tighten. "Mom," he began, voice steady but carrying a weight I could feel in my chest, "there's something I need to tell you. About Dad." My fork paused midair, the clatter of silverware in the quiet kitchen sounding unusually loud. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, masking the sudden unease curling in my stomach. He swallowed. And I noticed how much he resembled his father in that subtle gesture like Michael. He was measured, careful, but beneath that control. I sensed an urgency I couldn't ignore. "It's serious. I didn't want to tell you this, but I found out something. Something about Dad that you need to know." The room seemed to shrink, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the fading sunlight doing nothing to soothe the sudden chill that ran through me. My mind raced. Illness? Financial trouble? A job-related scandal? But the words Adam hadn't said yet were far heavier than any of those possibilities. I don't understand," I whispered, my hands tightening around the table's edge. "You need to know the truth." "Mom," he said, leaning forward, eyes locked on mine. "Dad, he hasn't been honest with you about everything." The silence that followed was suffocating. It stretched long enough for me to feel every heartbeat, every sharp inhale, every unspoken question spinning wildly in my mind. Michael's absence, once a minor inconvenience, suddenly felt like a warning I had ignored. And Adam, my son, my anchor, had become the bearer of a revelation that threatened to undo the foundation of the life I thought I knew. For the first time in years, I realized that some truths aren't gentle. They arrive like storms, and the only thing left to do is brace yourself. I sank back into my chair, my hands trembling slightly as I tried to process Adam's words. The kitchen felt impossibly small, the late afternoon sunlight fading into a dull amber that made the room seem almost unreal. Michael should have been here. He should have been the one to explain. And yet, the truth was coming from Adam, the child who had always looked to me for guidance. Now acting as my guide through a maze I never wanted to enter, Adam's voice, steady but heavy, cut through the silence. "Mom, I didn't snoop. I wouldn't invade his privacy like that if I didn't think it mattered. I saw things, messages, calls, evidence that he's been hiding more than just work stress." I clasped my mug of tea, hoping the warmth would anchor me, but it did little to stop the rush of panic. Michael, my husband of nearly 20 years, had always been patient, reliable, the kind of man whose calm presence made our home feel safe. And yet now, every memory of small kindnesses, the way he'd brush a strand of hair from my face, the quiet "I love you" whispered at night, seemed tinged with something I couldn't name. "Adam? How long has this been going on?" My voice was barely audible, but each word carried the weight of 1,000 questions I wasn't ready to ask. "I'm not completely sure," he admitted, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "From what I could find, at least a year. Maybe more." I tried to piece it together without freaking out, but it kept coming back to me. "Mom, you need to know." I felt a shiver run down my spine. The apartment around us, once comforting, now seemed alien. The faint scent of cinnamon tea, the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the golden light streaming through the curtains. All of it felt like a stage set for a reality I wasn't prepared to face. I thought of Michael's absence. These past months, the late nights at the office, the sudden irritability, the moments when I caught him staring at nothing with a distant look in his eyes. I had written it off as stress, exhaustion, fatigue. But now, framed by Adam's words, it felt like a slow reveal of cracks I had ignored for too long. Adam leaned closer, his voice gentle but insistent. Mom, you don't have to react now. I needed you to hear it from me first before it hit you from somewhere else. Tears blurred my vision, and I realized I was shaking not from fear alone, but from the helplessness of knowing I had been kept from the truth. My heart ached not only for myself, but for the man I thought I knew, and the son who was now carrying pieces of a burden meant for both of us. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Finally breaking the silence, Adam gave a small, rueful smile, the kind that usually eased my worries. You don't have to. Just think. Be ready, things are about to change, Mom, and I promise we'll figure it out together. The words hung between us like a warning and a promise, a delicate balance of fear and hope. I stared at my son, my heart full of both pride and dread, knowing that the quiet life we had taken for granted was about to fracture in ways I could not yet imagine. That night, Michael came home later than usual. The apartment was cloaked in the dim glow of the hallway lamp, the familiar creak of the floorboards sounding harsher than it ever had. I sat at the dining table, the tea I had poured long ago now cold, untouched. Adam had gone to his room, giving me a quiet nod before retreating, leaving me alone with the heavy silence that seemed to pulse in time. With my heartbeat, Michael's keys clattered on the counter. He looked tired, more exhausted than ever, but there was something else too. An unease in his eyes that betrayed a secret he had not yet admitted. Sarah, he said cautiously, is everything okay? I forced myself to stand, my voice steady though my insides trembled. Michael, we need to talk, now. He frowned, uncertainty flickering across his face. Can it wait? I've had a long day. No, I said sharply. Not this time. He hesitated, then sank into the chair across from me. The moment stretched as I searched his expression for answers, for signs of denial or guilt, for anything I could cling to. I don't understand, he said finally, voice low. What are we talking about? I took a deep breath, the air thick with unspoken words. Adam told me the truth, Michael. About you, about Melissa. His face paled. A flicker of something raw and fragile crossed his features, shock, fear, and a hint of shame. Sarah, I interrupted, my voice shaking. Don't start explaining yet. Just sit there. Hear me, you have a year or more of secrets hidden behind every excuse, every late night, every look away. And now we know. He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. The weight of silence pressed into the room, a physical presence that made breathing difficult. I could see him struggling to construct words that might justify what could not be justified. Sarah, it wasn't planned. I never wanted to hurt you, he said finally, voice cracking. I got lost. I didn't know how to stop. I lost? I repeated, disbelief and pain intertwining in my tone. A mistake is losing your keys. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake isn't betraying your family for months. Hiding it like it's invisible. The anger bubbled within me, a mix of heartbreak and disbelief. But beneath it was a more chilling fear, the realization that the life I thought I knew was built on illusions. I had spent years trusting a man who had quietly, carefully, created a double life. Michael's hands trembled slightly as he folded them in his lap. I can't change what I did, he admitted. I can only try to make it right. Somehow. I looked toward the doorway, toward Adam's closed door, and then back at him. The room felt smaller, heavier. The past I had clung to was gone. And the future I imagined uncertain. I whispered more to myself than to him. I don't know if right is even possible anymore. Michael's silence answered for him, and in that stillness, I realized that nothing would ever be the same, not the home. Not my trust, not even the quiet evenings I had once taken for granted. The fracture had begun, and no gentle words could repair it. The next morning, I woke to the soft, pale light of winter filtering through the curtains. The apartment was quiet, but the calm felt fragile, as though it could shatter at any moment. I found Adam in the living room, hunched over his laptop, his face illuminated by the pale screen. He glanced up, and for the first time, I saw a shadow in his eyes, a weight he had been carrying silently. Protecting both of us from its full impact, I think you need to see this, he said softly. Sliding his phone across the coffee table toward me, I picked it up with tentative fingers. The messages, images, and emails Adam had uncovered were laid out before me like evidence in a case I never wanted to prosecute. They were clear, undeniable, and merciless. Words of intimacy, plans, promises to someone named Melissa a world of secret life Michael had built while I slept beside him. I felt my chest tighten. Every memory of Michael the mornings he made me coffee, the way he brushed my hair from my face, the quiet "I love you" whispered at night was now tainted, replaying in my mind with a bitter aftertaste. Adam watched me silently, knowing that the full weight of truth needed time to settle. Finally, I whispered, "A year. And you never thought I'd find out?" Adam's voice was steady yet gentle. I think he hoped he wouldn't. Maybe he thought it would never surface. But secrets like this, they always do? I set the phone down, my hands trembling. I can't believe this. How could he hide so much? From me? From us? Adam reached out, placing his hand over mine. Mom, you didn't deserve this. None of it. But now that you know, we can face it. Together. I nodded slowly, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Part of me ached for Michael, for the man I had loved for decades, the man who was now undeniably flawed, human in ways I hadn't wanted to accept. Another part of me ached for Adam, my son, who had carried a burden that should never have been his to bear. When Michael finally entered the room, I could see the tension etched across his face. He had always been calm, measured, but now he looked small, exposed, stripped of pretense. I held up the phone silently, the evidence undeniable. He sank into the couch beside Adam and me, the room heavy with unspoken words. I never meant for any of this to happen, he admitted, voice low, fragile. I lost my way, and I don't know if I can undo the damage. I swallowed, the anger and sorrow swirling into a complex ache. You don't get to decide what I feel. You don't get to decide what Adam feels. You just live with it. And maybe somehow try to be better from here on. Michael nodded silently, and in that quiet I realized that this was our new reality. The man I had trusted had faltered, but life and love demanded we confront it rather than bury it. Adam squeezed my hand gently. A reminder that even in betrayal, family could be a shield, not a weapon, and in that moment I understood the hardest truth. The world we thought we knew could fracture in an instant. And yet, the bonds that mattered most, the ones we choose to honor, might just endure. The weeks that followed were quiet but tense, like a fragile vase placed on the edge of a shelf. Michael no longer hid. He made small gestures, gentle attempts at rebuilding what he had broken. Sometimes it was a cup of coffee left beside my chair. A soft, "I'm sorry," whispered when the room felt too heavy with silence. Other times it was simply his presence sitting across from me at dinner without pretense. Acknowledging the fault lines between us without trying to cover them. Adam became my anchor. He remained patient and steady, the one constant in the chaos. We spent evenings talking quietly, piecing together the new rhythm of our lives. His calm, thoughtful presence reminded me that while betrayal had shaken the foundation of trust, it had not eroded the bond between mother and son. That bond, fierce, unyielding, protective, had carried us through the storm, and promised we could endure whatever came next. I learned something profound in those days. Forgiveness is not a single act, nor is it immediate. It is a series of choices, small and deliberate, made with awareness and courage. I could forgive Michael, perhaps, but trust? That would take years if it ever fully returned. And yet, the act of acknowledging the truth, confronting it and moving forward no matter how hesitantly, was in itself a form of healing. Some nights, I found myself staring at the ceiling, imagining a world in which the past had been different. But those imaginings quickly gave way to reality. The man I had loved, the life I had built, and the son who had saved me from the weight of lies. All of it remained altered but enduring. I noticed small changes in Michael too. He spoke more openly, allowed moments of vulnerability, and no longer assumed that love alone could erase mistakes. And though the memory of betrayal lingered, the cracks it had left behind also created space for honesty, for clarity, for an imperfect but real connection. Adam, ever perceptive, would sometimes catch my eye and offer a knowing smile. A silent reassurance that despite everything, we were still a family. It was in these small gestures and these quiet acknowledgments that I began to understand resilience, not as something grand, but as something lived. Moment by moment, I cannot say that life returned to what it was before, nor can I claim that the future is certain. Michael and I continue to navigate the fragile terrain of our relationship, each step deliberate, each conversation measured. But I do know this, even when the ground beneath you shifts, even when the people you love falter, there is strength in facing truth and choosing connection. The moment everything changed with my son was not just the revelation of betrayal, it was the beginning of understanding, acceptance, and the realization that love, though flawed, is not easily extinguished. And as I sit here reflecting on the past and the days yet to come, I feel an unexpected clarity. Life may fracture, but we endure, guided by the bonds that matter most and the courage to confront what we cannot ignore.